This conference will now be recorded.
So basically, last week, right? What we have discussed here. So initially, we just were started about this Azure Admin plus DevOps, and just I have taken some example. So what is the reason to first of all, what is the reason to go for cloud computing? So within this, we have taken some examples. So if you want to host some particular website, what are the things we require here basically? So we need to buy some group of servers. So if you're getting some high traffic, definitely we require some more servers, and monitoring and maintenance of servers is also required. And within this, we have find some limitations or disadvantages. So where the servers and setup cost is high and troubleshooting problems, so definitely conflict our existing business. Traffic to particular website is not a constant, and even space is also not a constant, right? And we have taken some example as Amazon.in or any e-commerce sites. And finally, we have given some conclusion that in order to host for a particular website, local systems and bunch of servers is not enough. In order to overcome these limitations, or in order to overcome the above limitations, we have gone for cloud or a cloud computing. So now what is a cloud? Cloud is having some unlimited space or collection of data centers. So now what is a data center? Apart from that, what is a data? So data is nothing but information nowadays. So indirectly humans are generating huge amount of data knowingly or unknowingly, right? That is nothing but what is exactly data. So it can be some different social networking sites or whatever the sites which are accessing, right? Or even we are sending some huge amount of emails with or without attachments as well. So directly we are generating huge amount of data by accessing different sites as well, right? And here, finally, we have concluded that we are getting some huge amount of data. So where we are storing this much amount of data? Nothing but server. That should be a highly configured, right? Which operates 24 cross 7, large amount of hard disk and large amount of RAM. And we need to configure some firewalls, some security related concepts apart from that perspective server here, right? So now a collection of these servers are known as racks. A collection of these racks are stored in a building or a multiple buildings are known as a data center. And I mean, which we're calling as a data center. A collection of these data centers is nothing but a cloud. Now, what is cloud computing? Okay, so any cloud computing platform is going to perform three things: storing the data, processing the data, and accessing the data. So now, what is exactly Azure now? So Azure is a cloud computing, cloud solution which provides a lot of services and features to help your organization in almost all the way during the development of any project or a product by providing multiple tools and technologies. This is nothing but what is exactly Azure cloud computing or Azure cloud solution. So now within this Azure, so as I mentioned, it is having some lots of services, right? So out of that, we are focusing on Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is a future or a service of Azure. So these things we discussed here, basically. Now, if you go to class two, so just we discussed about what is the need of DevOps or what is the reason to go for DevOps. So if you want to develop any type of project, basically we are following some software SDLC, software development lifecycle. Within this lifecycle, it is having some different phases or different categories like plan, code, build, test, deploy, and operate and monitoring. And again, these categories are belongs to your different teams like business team, development team, and operations team. And even if you want to develop some application, this application development or some product or some project, so this application need to go through some different environments. So then only finally customer or client is going to access that application. So these are the uh, different environments. Okay, so and these environments is not a constant. It is going to vary to company to company. Okay, So now here we discussed about two models basically. Just we discussed what is what, but we did not discuss in detail. So in detail we're going to discuss later. Okay. So one is waterfall model and agile model. Whenever if you're going with this waterfall model, all these three teams, what are the three teams in which I have mentioned you, are working independent to each other. But if you go with this agile model, basically this business team and development team is going to work together to the success of the product. So, but still we're finding some gap between this development team and operations team. So where in order to fulfill this gap, so we are going for a concept called as a DevOps, nothing but a development plus operations. So DevOps is a practice so in which fills the gap between development team and operations team. So that is the reason we are going for DevOps. Now if you go for clause 3, so just we're discussing about how to create an Azure account hierarchy of Azure networking IPv4 and IPv6 network classes. I mean how to create some resource group virtual network subnet, and then we have created some Windows virtual machine as well, right? So now if you go for this creation of Azure account, so how we are creating some Gmail is the same way, nothing complex to create some Azure account. But here we require some credit card as well. Okay, that is the only thing. So now within the Azure account, we're having some three subscriptions. One is free trial. So 30 days. Within these 30 days, Microsoft is going to provide some $200 in your respective account. So once if this retail is done, so then you can go with some pay as you go, means whatever the services in which you're closing within that Azure cloud account. So that service only you can pay the amount for that respect to Microsoft. So then anyway, the student account what doesn't require. So then we discussed about some hierarchy of Azure. So basically, whenever if you are creating some Azure cloud account, right? So these two things is common. So definitely you're having some one tenant ID, which is a unique and subscription ID as well. Okay. So then here, if you want to create some resource group, virtual network, sub networks, and virtual machines, so you can create any of the Azure cloud account, whatever the Azure cloud account we have created. Okay. So then we discussed about each account will have some one tenant ID. Each tenant ID will have some multiple subscription IDs. Each subscription ID will have multiple resource group. Each resource group will have multiple virtual network. Each virtual network will have multiple sub network. Each virtual machine will have all the above these things. And these things, so finally, if you want to create some virtual machine as well, we have discussed how to create these things, right? If you go for some class 4, I mean, in class 3, we have created some resource group, virtual network, subnetwork, and finally we have created some virtual machine as well. And creation is important, and as well as deletion is also important. So instead of deleting each and every individual service, I mean virtual network, subnetwork, and virtual machine, so try to delete the resource group. So whenever if you're trying to delete the resource group, all this hierarchy, whatever the hierarchy we have created, complete hierarchy is going to be deleted automatically. Okay, try to delete the resource group. And finally, we have defined some resource group. It is a logical grouping of all the services, and virtual machine is an imaginary machine, right? And then we discussed about IPv4 and IPv6. IPv4 is a 32-bit, IPv6 is a 128 bits, right? And we have defined some range as well, and we have defined some example. And the major difference between IPv4 and IPv6 is in IPv6 we can connect more devices, and the speed is constant as well, and then IPv6 is more secure than IPv4. Okay, these things we discuss, and we have defined some example as well. So now IP addresses classes, nothing but this again this IP address is divided into different classes like class A, class B, class C, class C, and class D, and within this each of these classes is having its own range. Based upon that range we can define, right? So then if you go for class 5, so within this IP addresses, we're having some a small concept called as a network ID and broadcast ID. So if you go for this specific range, right? So the starting of this IP address is nothing. This is nothing but network ID, and ending of this IP address or ending of this IP address range, that is nothing but a broadcast ID here. Okay, and then we discussed about reason to go for IP addresses. So if you have found some different teams which is handled by some project architect, so each and every team will require some virtual machines or some IP addresses. So where Azure admins or operation team is going to provide this respective IP addresses or virtual machines here for that respective teams. And then, so we have created some resource group, virtual network and subnet, and then we have created, after creating some virtual machine, so we're going to get two IP addresses, nothing but public IP address and private IP address. So now if you go with this public IP to connect internet to virtual machine, and private IP, internal communication between VM to VM. So this private IP we will discuss later in our upcoming classes. But if you go for public IP to connect internet to virtual machine. So here if you observe, we have created Windows machine, right? So we have created some Windows machine. So now if you want to access or if you want to utilize this Windows machine, right? What is the software required here? Nothing but RDP, remote desktop protocol. So now within this RDP, we need to provide the public IP address of that respective virtual machine. Whatever the virtual machine we have created, we are going to get some public IP address. Provide this public IP address. Now we need to provide the username and password as well. So then we are able to log in into that respective Windows virtual machine. So this is the way how to access or how to utilize the Windows virtual machine. Okay, so these things I think we have discussed in our last couple of classes, right? So any doubts in these things, any of these classes of any of you, is it fine? Fine, all of you, any doubts? So now today we'll discuss about, so as I mentioned you in our last class, we have discussed about uh, we have created some Windows virtual machine and we are trying to access or we are trying to utilize by using some RTP software, right? So today we are trying to create some Linux virtual machine. Okay, so how to do these things we will discuss today. So how to deploy or how to create Linux virtual machine. So first of all, we need to create some resource group. Otherwise, first of all, log into azure.com, create resource group, maybe some Azure test, virtual network, Azure test underscore vnet, subnetwork, Azure test underscore subnet, virtual machine. So here we want to create some Linux machine, right? Maybe Linux machine one, something like this. Okay, so go to any web browser. So log into portal.azure.com and provide your credentials for username and password. So create some resource group, maybe some Azure test. So you can select the reason, whatever the reason you want. Next tags, if you want you can provide the tags, so which environment it is belongs to. Next, review and create, and finally click on create. So one resource group is created, right? So then you need to create some virtual network. Click on create. Azure test. Maybe my virtual network name is Azure test underscore vnet. Next IP address 10.11.0.0/16. Click on add subnet Azure test underscore subnet 10.11.1.0/24. Click on add. Next security. Next tags. You can, if you want, you can provide some tags. Next review and create. Finally click on create. So it is created some virtual network and as well as a subnet as well, right? So then what we need to do? We need to create some Linux machine. So click on this virtual machines. Click on create virtual machine. So here we already created some resource group, right? Select that respect to resource group. Provide some virtual machine name, maybe some Linux machine one, right? So here image. So previously, if you observe our previous class, we have selected some Windows Server 2019 data center hyphen Gen 1 or Gen 2 something, right? But instead of that, we can go with some Ubuntu server. So select some Linux related images. Okay, I'm going with some Ubuntu and sizes as well. So whatever the size you want, you can choose whether it is a B2 or B1. Generally, we're choosing some B2 or B1. So I'm going with some B2. Okay, click on select. So here, if you observe authentication type, so basically authentication type is nothing but generally we are providing some username and password for that respect to virtual machine, right? Basically, but here if you observe, we're having two options. So one is by using some SSH public key, and one more thing is by using some password. Means we are able to access or we are able to utilize this Linux virtual machine, right, using two ways. Either you can provide username and password, or if you want to authenticate, simply you can say that if you want to authenticate Linux virtual machine, any of these things. So one is by using a password. So how you have accessed this Windows virtual machine in our last class, same way by using this password mechanism. But here we are having one more way called as an SSH public key. Okay, so how to access or how to authenticate by using SSH public key, we will discuss later. Okay, currently we are going with password. Okay, so try to provide some username and password. Okay, just I have created, just I have given some username password. Okay, so here if you observe this public inbound ports, so one way is you can provide here. Okay, so why we are providing some SSH double two this HTTP or HTTPS. We'll discuss that. We'll discuss later. But currently, so if you want to provide some port, okay, whenever while creating this virtual machine, so that you can go with some SSH double two. Otherwise, if you want some reason, we will discuss later. Okay, why we are providing some SSH double two. Currently, click on none. Okay, so next disks. So go with standard SSD. Next networking. So here you're going to get whatever the virtual network and whatever the subnet which you have created already. Okay, that is nothing but Azure test underscore vnet Azure test underscore subnet. Next management. Click on disable. Next advanced. Next tags. If you want, you can provide some tags. Next review and create. So just it is going to check whatever the things which are provided in all of these options. So whether it is matching or not. So if it is everything is fine, we are going to get some validation passed. Okay, click on create. So it will take some time to create this virtual machine. So it is created, right? Yes. So click on this virtual machine. Click on this Linux machine one. So same way. So if you observe in our previous class, after creating some Windows virtual machine, right? So basically you are going to get some two IP addresses. One is public IP address and one more thing is private IP address. So now if you want to access any of these virtual machines, okay, whether it is a Linux or Windows virtual machine, so basically we are copy pasting this public IP address, right? But if you go for Windows, we have used some software. What is the software? RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, right? But it is not the same for if you go with some Linux virtual machines. Okay, so here what we have done till now, just we have created, right, Linux machine. So now if you want to access or if you want to utilize this machine, right? So here also we require some software instead of RDP for Windows. So here what is the software is, so nothing but putty. We require a software called as an putty. So why we are going for that software here? So if you want to access or if you want to utilize this Linux virtual machine, so we are going for a software called as an putty. Okay, so most of us we don't have this software. Just go to Google and type putty download for Windows 10 64-bit. So go to this website, so you can download it here basically. Okay, So you can download it here and you try to install the software, nothing complex. So just you need to click on next. That's it. It is going to install the software. Already having this software, I already installed as well. So go to start button and type some putty. This is the software basically. So just nothing is there. So just you can download from this respective particular site and just you can install the software. So how you are installing some VLC media player. So same way. So nothing complex in this. So you don't need to choose any options. Just you need to click on next. So automatically the software is going to install in your respective laptop or your desktop. So once if it is installed, right? So you're going to get like this. Okay. So here, if you observe same way, here host name or IP address. So whatever the IP address or whatever the public IP address which you have got from this virtual machine, so just you can copy paste it here. Okay, click on open. See here, are we able to access? So here we are not able to access. We are getting some network error. So connection timed out or maybe some fatal error. Some error we are getting. So simply we can say that we are not able to access this machine. So reason is why we are not able to access this machine is here we need to tell to this Linux machine, okay, please allow this putty software. Okay, please allow this putty software or we need to configure this putty related respective port in this respective Linux machine. So basically, if you observe RDP, so what is the predefined port or what is the default port we're having? 3389. So that 3389 we have configured in the Windows virtual machine, whatever the Windows virtual machine which you have created, right? Same way here also we need to tell to this Linux machine one, right? So please allow this putty software. So how can we allow this putty software is we need to configure the default port for putty, whatever the default port which you are having. So that default port we need to configure, right, in this respect to Linux machine one. So now if you go to Google and type default port for what is the default port? 22, right? So this port we need to configure in networking. Go to networking and here try to add this add inbound port rule and provide 22. That is a default port for SSH, right? And here you can mention maybe some port SSH hello this software, some description. Click on add. Just we are configuring this putty default port in the networking option. So within this networking option, we just click on add inbound port rule. Okay. So now some rule is created. So it is created a security rule, something like this, right? So now go to overview and copy this public IP address. Go to putty software and paste it here. Click on open. Will not take this much time. Just refresh it here once. Copy and paste it. Putty here. Putty security alert. Click on accept. So now you can provide the username and password, whatever the username and password which I have provided while creating this virtual machine. Okay, so that is Shiva1 in the respect to password. Here, so this is the way. So if you want to access this Linux machine, so once if we created some Linux machine within this Azure cloud account, so this is the way to access. Okay, so is it fine till now? Any dots here? Any of you? How to create or how to access this Linux machine within this Azure cloud account?
No, Shiva.
Fine. So once Linux virtual machine is created inside of Azure cloud account, if we want to access this Linux virtual machine, we require a software called as PuTTY. And this software is also having a default port. This is the default port, that is 22, in which we need to configure the respective virtual machine. Okay, so then only we are able to access the Linux virtual machine. Otherwise, so we're going to get some errors, right? So which you have seen already. Okay. So now basically if you observe in Windows, so we're having some user, some name, maybe some Shiva1. So we're having some admin as a root user. So this is in Windows, right? But here if you go with some Linux, so we're having some user. So like Shiva1, we're having some, instead of admin, we're having some root user. So this is in Linux or in Linux operating system. Okay. So how to navigate from this user? So here my username is Shiva1, right? From this Shiva1 to I want to navigate to root user. So how can we navigate that? So that is, so by using a predefined command called as sudo space su, nothing but a super user hyphen. So what is the command? Sudo space su nothing but a super user space hyphen. Here, so previously we were having some Shiva1 as a user, now is a root user. Okay, so this is in Linux environment. So just here we're going to discuss some Linux commands. So what is the command which I discussed just now? Sudo space su space hyphen. So just it is going to navigate from user to root. So we're having some ls or maybe some ll as well. Anything is fine. So just it is going to list out all the files or folders in that specific user. You can type some ll or ls, something. Sometimes ls is not recognized, so you can type some ll as well. So if you type some ll, so within this root user, right, so these many number of files or folders will have. So instead of folders, in Linux point of view, they're calling as a directories as well. Okay, files or directories, we can say that instead of folder. So folder is which is applicable for Windows, but in Linux point of view, they're calling as a directories. Okay, anything is fine. So now, if you want to clear the screen, we're having a command called as a clear to clear the screen. Now, if you want to make some directory, right? So we run command called as an mkdir to make directory. So type some cl here, clear. So mkdir. Okay, so I can give some name, maybe some first. Okay, so mkdir. I have given some name as a first as my directory name. So now if you want to cross check whether this directory is created or not, okay, just to type some ls here. It is created a directory with name as a first. So just if you want to create some directory, mkdir followed by some name, it can be any name. So just I have taken my name as a first, or you can take some test or first, second, some name, whatever the name you want basically. So after that, right? So if you want to know whether this directory is created within the specific user or not, so just you can type some ll. So ll to list out all the files or directories within that specific user. Here my user is nothing but a root. So just I have typed some ll. So it is created some directory with name as first. Okay. So now if I want to navigate to this first directory, right? So we're having a command called as cd, nothing but change directory, change directory. So here just I want to navigate to first directory. Okay, just I want to navigate to first directory. So that is the reason I have typed some cd space first, something like this. Okay. Now currently, if you observe, we are in first directory. Okay, that using a command called as a cd, change directory. So if you want to navigate from one directory to other directory, so just we need to go with cd command, change directory. Okay. So now within this directory, right, if you want to create some file, so we're having a command called as touch to create a file. So touch. Okay, so maybe I'm creating some ABC as a file. Click on enter, type ll here. Now it is created with file name as a ABC. Just we have created. Okay. So now if you want to edit this file, we have a command called as an vi to edit the file. So vi space what is our file name ABC, right? So now here within this file, I mean after typing some vi space your file name, so if you want to insert something, right, so you need to click on I. Now if you observe at the here, now currently it is in insert mode. Okay, so you can type something, so maybe some to Azure cloud account, something like this. Okay, you can type something, anything you want. After you click on I is for insert. So whenever you click on I, so if you observe this within this putty console, you are going to, it will be changed to insert mode. Okay, so one way is, so if you want to exit from this one, right, so you can try, you can type some control S and control X. That is a one way. Okay, so otherwise type some escape. Okay, I think it is stuck with my screen. Screen is stuck actually. Give me 1 minute. Photo putty. Just I am navigating to root user. So I'm changing that to first, and after that type LL. So we're having some ABC. So VI space ABC. What happened? Attention already exists. So previously we have closed it, right? We did not exit from the putty console directly. We have closed it, right? So that is the reason we are getting this type of message. Okay, so basically whenever if you're going with some vi abc, so just generally if you go for windows, so if you created some file, right, so if you want to write some data within that file, what we're doing, so just we are opening that specific file. So like this we are opening and we are typing something. This is in windows, but it is not the case in Linux operating system. So if you want to edit some file, within that file if you want to write something, right, we're having command called as an vi space abc. So after opening that file, right, so if you want to insert something or if you want to write something, right, so you need to click on I button. Okay, so where you can write something basically. Okay, so just I will type open, click on I. So here it will change it as a, it will change it to as an insert. If you observe here, insert. Okay, so welcome to Azure. Click on escape, right, and you can, here at the end you can provide colon WQ. So whenever you're providing some colon WQ, just we are saving and we are getting and we are existing from this file. Okay, click on enter, read only option. What happened? WQ. Just to add to override.